Hello, I'm Alex Tarrant for interest.co.nz and welcome to another one of our double shot interviews. This time we have Dieter Adam from the New Zealand Manufacturers and Exporters Association. This is around a political panel that the NZMEA is running with Finance Minister Stephen Joyce, Labour's Finance Spokesman Grant Robertson and the Greens co-leader James Shaw. And ahead of this election we're going to be asking Dieter about what the Manufacturers and Exporters Association really wants to see in terms of policy that could help his sector. So Dieter, welcome to interest.co.nz. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for having me.
No worries. Now, Joyce, Robertson and Shaw, it's quite a lineup. What exactly are you wanting to hear from them? Because the manufacturing sector, I think, as a proportion of GDP in New Zealand has gone from 26% about 40 years ago to just over 10% now, I think. So what are your members really wanting to hear from these political leaders?
I think sort of the main thing for us is, and has been for quite a while, is simply just a recognition that we exist almost. So yes, we've gone, like in most OECD countries, the share of manufacturing in GDP has gone down. But we're still at 10%, we're still number 2 in terms of contribution to GDP. The industry employs about just under 180,000 FTEs, so it's still a significant industry. And what we really find is that there is, when we talk to government, we talk to a lot of people, but there's no coordinated view about manufacturing. There isn't a single entity, as far as I'm aware, a single entity anywhere in government that's got the name manufacturing in it.
I think the Greens want a manufacturing minister.
Yeah, and that's one of our demands, or one of our suggestions, is that whether it's a minister or whether it's some other coordinated agency that really looks at what's happening in manufacturing across the different sectors, right from infrastructure issues to education issues, it doesn't happen. So by comparison, we've got a Ministry for Primary Industries. That's, I don't know how many hundred people they have. We don't need several hundred people, but there needs to be somewhere in government a coordinating function across the different activities of government that looks after manufacturing.
Then what would you like this minister to focus on? Is it because we hear lots of calls for a lower exchange rate, we hear calls for R&D tax credits. Manufacturing is touched by many different policy areas. So what exactly could this person focus on?
Look, for us, I talk a lot to manufacturers across the country, and one of the questions I always ask is, what's the biggest handbrake on growth? And especially in the two main centres, Auckland and Christchurch, and they are the main manufacturing centres, the answer more often than not is skills. We have a significant skill shortage, and it is getting worse all the time.
Okay.
I think it's probably fair to say that overall our members have somewhat limited expectations of what government can do for them. They're quite aware that the success of their business largely depends on what they do and their own skills. But we have to recognise that tertiary education, and to some extent secondary education, that is a domain of the state. And the government spends a lot of money in this area, and what we can see, and it's not only us, it's construction industry, it's a primary industry, everybody says that the tertiary education system doesn't produce the people that we need in our industry.
I think the OECD, in a recent report, they mentioned they'd like to see maths boosted, tuition boosted, because that would lead to, I guess, more engineering students coming out or going to universities. So
yeah, but see, that's an interesting example, because what the government's actually done a few years ago is sort of recognized and said, you know, we think there's a problem, so we're going to spend, I think, $50 million on additional engineering students. So we've now got engineering students coming out of the system that don't have a job, can't find a job, because the shortage is not at the graduate engineer level as much as it's the levels below. Okay. So these are trained technicians. And so I had a meeting with Minister Goldsmith yesterday, and my suggestion to him was that we should actually set up a study, because we don't have the resources to do it on it. We need to set up a study that actually understands where the real skill shortages are.
So this is from politics and stuff, and those kind of institutions.
And also where this is going to go in the future. We have some pretty clear ideas with all the technology changes that are hitting manufacturing as it is right now. we're going to have a significant change in the skills profile, and the skills demands will just go up.
Sure. I want to get onto that a bit later, but we've had a talk about immigration policy around Parliament in recent weeks. And what's the NZMEA's view on the tweaks made by the government? And also, have you got a view on Labour's policy as well? Because they're more focused on students below bachelor degree level, their changes.
I mean, for us, the changes that have been suggested weren't helpful, because it would have meant that
by the government.
Yeah, it would have meant that a proportion of the migrant workers we employ would have had to go back after 3 years, which is really, it doesn't make any sense. You just train them up and then you have to send them back.
The argument is, though, if you're able to train locals up, then there won't be that need.
Yeah, but we don't have them. I mean, look, I don't know of anybody who says, I want to employ a migrant. People need skilled workers, and it is so desperate, they'll happily employ a Kiwi, but if in most cases there's no Kiwi available. So I think what we need is a more targeted migration policy. What we are concerned about is, as one of our Christchurch members put it recently, we get punished by too many people coming to Auckland, and then the overall flow of migrants is being constrained. I think we need a more targeted migration policy. Okay. Our primary interest is in changing the skills mix that comes out of our own tertiary education system, but that's not going to happen overnight. And in the meantime, if we want to keep the factories running, we need to fill the gaps with a mix of local preferred but also migrant workers.
Do you have a confidence, after your meeting with the Minister of Tertiary Education, do you have a confidence that they will look to change things here in terms of the Polytech situation?
Yes and no. I think, look, the problem I have is I can't go to the Minister and say this is exactly what needs to change, because we don't have the analytical power ourselves to say, I couldn't tell you exactly how many skilled workers are missing in what particular roles. So but we can't make intelligent policy decisions if you don't have an analysis of the actual situation and some projections about the future. So that needs to be the first step.
Another issue we're looking at, well, it's every election now, is R&D. How to foster more research and development in New Zealand. Labour's had a long-running policy of reintroducing R&D tax credits, but the Finance Minister, Stephen Joyce, has said that firms just tend to reclassify spending in order to be able to get the tax credits. What's NZMEA's position on what's needed here?
Look, the system we currently have is one where the larger companies get what's called a Callaghan Growth Grant, and it is an R&D tax credit in drags. I mean, it's 20% of their reimbursement of it. Okay. So it's a relabeling of something that works quite well. And when I talk to the companies who get the growth grants from Callaghan, they're happy. But that's a minority. The vast majority of smaller companies aren't eligible. They have to go through project grants, and a lot of them have given up on that because it's quite difficult. It's administratively cumbersome. But I think the bigger problem is that the government's got quite a narrow view of what is innovation. So innovation is a guy with a PhD in a white coat developing some fancy new product. Innovation in real business happens in all sorts of ways. A lot of it is a combination of process and product innovation, and we've had discussions with Callaghan in the past where they said, look, process innovation, we don't cover that. That's something you need to.
Because it's too boring, or because it's?
Yeah, no, it is. It really sort of comes down, in my view, it comes down to an understanding and interpretation of innovation that's very much driven by sort of the fancy TV programs, rather than really understanding what innovation means in business. We have to keep in mind that innovation is a means to an end. So we talk about globally competitive companies because that's what our manufacturers need to be. And they innovate to stay globally competitive. They don't innovate because they like innovating.
Okay, sure.
And it may sound like a subtle difference, but it's important to keep that in mind.
And in terms of staying competitive and in the innovation sphere, I guess, there's a big debate at the moment about automation, particularly in the manufacturing industry, and what this means for the future of work, for the future of manufacturing? Is New Zealand going to even have a manufacturing base in the future with actual people working in it? There doesn't seem to be too much coming out of Parliament regarding this. I know Labour has a future of work program and a portfolio of the new economy, but what are you looking to hear in terms of automation and how we deal with that in the future? And what are your members looking to do?
Well, what our members are doing at the moment is some of them introducing new technologies, others still trying to find the way around which of these new technologies is right for them. Because again, it doesn't come down to put in new technology, it comes down to what do I need, what can I afford in order to stay globally competitive. In terms of the political debate, I can't really see any good evidence of us having an intelligent debate about the future of work and the future in our economy. We have a happening and increasingly happening huge penetration of IT technologies in all aspects of productive life. And so manufacturing will look quite different in 10 years' time. I'm sure of that. Don't know what exactly it's going to look like. We don't know what the impact on the number of jobs is, for example. So if you look at the studies that are done internationally, some people predict an increase in jobs in manufacturing. Some people predict a decrease. The question, will we have a manufacturing in the country? My answer is we better have, because I'm not aware of any reasonably wealthy country that doesn't have a strong manufacturing sector. Sometimes people tell me, well, look at Austria, it's really rich on tourism. When you actually look at the numbers, Austria is a heavily industrialized and high-performing manufacturing economy.
It's the argument here as well, is that the tourism and the services industry is going to such an extent that do we see people be displaced from the manufacturing and goods producing industries to there? And so I guess what high school students would be asking now is, why do I go to the Polytech to get those skills in order to, in 10 years' time, that job might not exist anymore?
Well, if you take the training that's required and apply yourself, you will have a job in manufacturing. I mean, yes, I know there's a sort of a temptation to say, well, if it's not a job in manufacturing, it's a job in tourism. We've known ever since the many speeches that Sir Paul Callahan gave us this, it's not a way to become richer by putting, I mean, a lot of the jobs in the service industries, like in tourism, are quite low paid and they're low productivity. And that's really, a lot of it comes down to the OECD just recently published their report on the New Zealand economy. And they show that our productivity in terms of wealth created per hour worked is at about just over 60% of the average. So we've got a huge step up to do in order, if we want to become a wealthier country, we need to increase the productivity in terms of GDP per hour worked. But if we create jobs that are lowly paid, like rather minimum wage, we're going to go down rather than up.
Okay, and automation can perhaps help there.
Yes, and what you see is there are many examples both in New Zealand and internationally where using new technologies has actually allowed companies to grow and keep their workers and just employ them more gainfully because they're more productive rather than going backwards.
Okay, so but you would like a conversation now about what things look like in 10 years' time?
Yes, we need it. I mean, it's because the changes are going to happen, and if we're not prepared for them, then we're going to be worse off.
All right, well, we hope that gets tackled on the panel. Perhaps Mr. Joyce might tell you what the government's thinking.
Well, we're certainly looking forward to answers from politicians about what their own thoughts are about the future of manufacturing and the future of our economy. Labour's done some work in their Future Works programme, but we need to see a more comprehensive discussion around that.
Well, enjoy it. Well, thanks very much, Dieter.
Well, thanks for the opportunity.
No worries.
Okay.
Well, that's another one of our double shot interviews with Dieter Adam from the New Zealand Manufacturers and Exporters Association. I'm Alex Tarrant for interest.co.nz.